You chose China because China chose you first. You got a government scholarship. The Chinese Scholarship Council, CSC, full ride, tuition covered, dormitory included, monthly stipend of around 2,500 yuan, which is about $350. Back home, that number sounds like a joke. In China, it sounds like survival with tight margins and zero room for bad decisions. Your parents tell everyone. The neighbor, the pastor, the cousin who never congratulated you on anything until now. My child is going to China. It lands like an announcement of arrival, not departure. You are the proof that the family made it somewhere. You haven't even packed yet, and already the wait is enormous. You fly into Beijing or Shanghai or Guangzhou, depending on which university accepted you and which city the scholarship assigned you to, as if you had a say in any of this. You probably didn't. The plane lands, and you walk out into an airport so large and so clean and so full of signs you cannot read that your brain quietly files a complaint. You have a university address written on a piece of paper. You have a phone with no local SIM. You have the number of a senior student from your home country who said they'd pick you up. They don't pick you up. You figure it out anyway. Because at this point, you've already survived the visa process, the medical examination, the police registration, the bank account application, and 4 different government offices that each needed a different set of documents in a specific order that nobody told you about in advance. You've been preparing for this without knowing you were preparing for this your entire life. The dormitory is not what the brochure suggested. The brochure had photos of modern rooms with good lighting and the implication of a social life. What you get is a room in the International Student Building, which is separated from the rest of campus in a way that is either for your convenience or not for your convenience, depending on how generously you want to interpret it. The room has 2 beds, a desk, a bathroom, and a window that faces another building. Your roommate is from a different African country assigned by the university based on what appears to be a random number generator with a vague geographic bias. You don't share a language. You don't share a culture. The only thing you share is the fact that you were both placed here by a system that sees African student as a single category. The same way it sees international dormitory as a single solution. You become friends anyway. Not immediately, but eventually. That's how it works when you're both far from home with nobody else who understands the specific texture of your particular displacement. The language is the first wall. Your scholarship requires you to pass HSK Level 4, the standardized Chinese proficiency test, within your first year before you can begin your actual degree program. This means your first year is almost entirely Mandarin classes. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, in a classroom full of other international students from 30 different countries, all of whom are learning the same language and all of whom are at different levels of despair about it. Mandarin has 4 tones. The same syllable spoken in 4 different pitches means 4 completely different things. Ma can mean mother, hemp, horse, or scold, depending on how your voice moves. You say the wrong tone at the wrong time, and you have called someone's mother a horse. The class laughs. The teacher corrects you. You write it down. You say it again. This is every day for 12 months. Your Chinese improves. Slowly, then suddenly. The way all language learning works, like nothing is happening. And then one day, you realize you ordered food, complained about the weather, and argued about a bill entirely in Mandarin, and nobody died. That day feels like a promotion, but language proficiency and social fluency are different things. You can say the words, you cannot always read the room. Chinese social norms operate on a set of unspoken rules that take years to decode. Directness is handled differently. Disagreement is expressed differently. Silence means different things depending on context. You are used to reading people through a different set of signals, and half the time you're reading the wrong signals and nodding confidently at conclusions that don't exist. You also learn quickly that being African in China is a specific experience that nobody fully prepared you for. On the street, people stare, not always with hostility. Sometimes with simple, undisguised curiosity, as if you are a thing they have seen on a screen, but not in person. Children point. Adults take photos without asking, occasionally while you are mid-sentence or mid-bite. You are used to being a person. Here you are periodically an exhibit. You develop a response that is somewhere between patience and exhaustion. Some days you handle it with grace. Some days you stare back. Most days you keep walking because you have a class to get to and a thesis to write, and the energy required to educate every stranger who has decided your existence is a public spectacle is energy you do not have. The word that follows African students in China, the word that sits in comment sections and gets muttered in certain neighborhoods and occasionally lands directly in your face, is heron. Black person. Neutral in definition, not always neutral in deployment. You learn the difference between the word used as description and the word used as dismissal. Sometimes they're the same sentence, and you have to decide which version just hit you. That decision costs something every time you make it. Discrimination in housing is a documented reality for African students in China. Landlords who won't rent to foreigners in general and to black foreigners in specific are common enough that the unofficial student networks that every African student eventually finds and joins exist partly to share lists of which landlords are safe and which will waste your afternoon. The dormitory becomes not just a room, but a system of protection from a rental market that has made its preferences clear without ever saying them out loud. Food is its own adjustment. Chinese cuisine is not one thing. It is 8 major regional cuisines with entirely different flavor profiles, heat levels, and ingredients. And when you arrive in Hunan, you will discover that spicy was a word you were using incorrectly your entire life. But the adjustment is real. If you grew up eating fufu or jollof or ugali or injera, your body has a specific idea of what a meal is supposed to feel like, and dumplings and congee and mapo tofu, as good as they eventually become, are not that. There are African grocery stores in most major cities, especially in Guangzhou, where a significant West and Central African community has existed for decades. But if you're in a smaller city, you are improvising. You are making things work. You are video calling your mother to describe ingredients and asking her to reverse engineer the recipe from whatever is available. She does. She always does. The stipend is 2,500 yuan a month for most CSC scholarship holders. Some universities give slightly more, some slightly less. Rent, if you live outside the dorm, can eat half of that in a mid-tier city and almost all of it in Beijing. For Shanghai, food, transportation, phone, and the occasional human need to do something that isn't studying accounts for the rest. There is no line item for emergencies. There is no buffer for the month. Your phone breaks, or you need to travel for a visa renewal, or a family situation happens back home, and the flight you can't afford is the only appropriate response. You get very good at math, the mental kind, the constant automatic calculation of whether you can afford the thing you're currently looking at. That math runs in the background of every day, and it doesn't stop when you're tired. Your degree is taught in Mandarin, which means every lecture, every textbook, every exam is in a language you've been speaking for 1 year. Your Chinese classmates have been speaking it their whole lives. You show up to the same exam with the same passing threshold and a fraction of their linguistic runway. Nobody adjusts the bar. Nobody is required to. You clear it anyway, more often than you expected, because you have been clearing bars set by people who didn't build them with you in mind for your entire academic life, and you are very good at it by now. The friendships you build are real, not all of them. Some are transactional in the way that international student friendships can be, built around shared inconveniences and dissolved when the inconveniences end. But some are the kind that form when two people have both been far from everything familiar for long enough that they stop performing and start just being. Your African student network becomes your family structure in the absence of the actual one. Someone always knows where to get the thing you need. Someone always has information about the immigration office change, or the scholarship renewal requirement, or the professor who is reasonable and the one who is not. The group chat is the institution. It runs 24 hours, and it has saved you from at least 3 situations that would have derailed a semester. You also form real friendships with Chinese students, eventually. It takes longer than you expected, partly because the international student dormitory keeps you physically separated, and partly because the cultural distance takes time to cover. But once it's covered, it's covered. The friend who spent 3 hours helping you practice your thesis defense in Mandarin. The classmate who showed you which vendor near campus sells cheap lamb skewers at midnight. The lab partner who became an actual person to you and to whom you became an actual person. These friendships matter, and they are built on something genuine. There is a particular moment that happens to almost every African student in China at some point in their second or third year. You can't schedule it. It arrives quietly. You're standing somewhere, maybe in line at the supermarket, maybe on the subway, maybe just walking across campus at night, and you realize you're not translating anymore. Not just the language, everything. The environment, the rhythm of the day, the small social rituals, the way people queue and eat and argue and apologize. It's just life now, not foreign life, just life. That moment is disorienting in the best way, because it means the place has gotten inside you. Not because it accepted you completely, it hasn't. Not in the way that would feel clean. Racism doesn't disappear because you've adapted. Bureaucratic frustration doesn't disappear because you've navigated it before. The staring doesn't stop. The math never stops. But you know this place. And knowing a place, really knowing it, its language and its rhythms and its contradictions and its food at midnight, is a kind of ownership that nobody can file a report on. You finish the degree, 4 years or 5 or 6, depending on the program. You submit the thesis in Mandarin. You defend it in Mandarin. The committee asks you questions in Mandarin, and you answer in Mandarin, and at some point in that room, you realize that the person who landed in that airport with a piece of paper and a dead phone and no local SIM is not the person currently holding this ground. Something changed. You changed. Not in the way the scholarship brochure implied, with photos of global leaders and shining futures. In the real way, the hard, daily, unglamorous way that nobody photographs. You graduate, you take the photo in the gown, you send it home, your mother cries. Your father posted on Facebook with 17 exclamation points. The neighbor, the pastor, the cousin who showed up late to every milestone, they're all there in the comments. They see the certificate. They don't see the 4 years. They don't see the tones you got wrong until you got them right. The landlord who turned you away before you found one who didn't. The stipend you stretched across every emergency it wasn't designed to cover. The moments on the subway when a city of 1 billion people made you feel like you were the only person in it. The group chat that kept you functional. The friend who helped you practice at midnight. The lamb skewers. The thesis, you carry all of that back on the same passport you arrive with, heavier, not because of what China took, because of what you built there in spite of everything it didn't give you. You built it yourself, in Mandarin, from scratch, in a place that was never designed for you and that you made work anyway. That part doesn't fit on a certificate, but it's the part that's actually yours. The experiences described in this script are drawn from documented realities faced by African students in China, including CSC scholarship structures, housing discrimination, language requirements, and community networks. If you've lived any version of this, drop it in the comments. I want to hear which part hit closest. More of these coming. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.